Dashavange was the Samanigo Shatrancha Aura I am the Rekopio the dead was Sarosisat Merisat Nipanama.
Okay. Thank you, Kashmira. And now, before we start, I would like all of you to mute yourselves because we are recording this session. So kindly keep yourselves on mute. And at the end of the program, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask those questions. And now I request Mr. Janaki Ram to kindly introduce our esteemed speaker, Mr. Brian Lewis.
Good evening, all the participants. It is my pleasure to introduce Brian Louis Liu Mo Dai. 2 weeks following the death of his mother, after completing all the final rites, in February 2015, he entered the cell of a Buddhist temple in the mountains of central Taiwan as a lay monk. For 5 years, he engaged in daily meditation, exercise, service, and quiet contemplation. Then he constructed a cave above the snow line in northern Utah. Then for 100 days, he meditated from 2:30 a.m. on his parents' love. In fact, he chose those 100 days because they overlapped the birth and death dates of his parents. In late June 80, having studied Tai Chi and meditation for more than 7 years, he stood before a stone wall at which Bodhidharma has focused his attention for 9 years. Inspired by Bodhidharma, our speaker Brian Lewis made a personal commitment to practice daily. That was fulfilled 10 years later, and then continued and expanded over 40 years, and he is still continuing. At the temple in which those years were spent, our speaker was given the name Liu Mo Dai, which means mopping the floor Li. So from his biodata, when I read, and I'm sure most of you also like me, must have thought this is the best way to spend one's time and life. And we are very eager to know from such a esteemed speaker about Zen, Tai Chi, wellness. So we are fortunate to have, and I thank the organizers and particularly Sajani for getting our esteemed speaker. Over to you.
So much, Mr. Janaki Ram. And now we hand it over to you, Mr. Brian Lewis. It's over to you.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the prayers, especially for the prayers and for the kind introduction. I'm very pleased and honored to be able to speak to you this evening. In introduction, I'd like to say that I'll be covering 4 topics briefly this evening or this morning, depending upon where you are, or maybe this afternoon, depending where you are. And those 4 topics will be a brief introduction and explanation of Zen and Tai Chi and wellness and hope. Any one of those topics would be possible to speak for several hours, if not several days, or perhaps even several weeks or months. So tonight will be a general overview, brief introduction. My plan is to speak on each of these individually, and then to stop for a few minutes to see if you have any questions or comments you may like to ask or pose about what I have just spoken about, and then move on to the next topic when we've completed that. Our plan is to be here somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half. I thought also that Perhaps after the first session would be about Zen, and the second session would be a Tai Chi. And I have a video link that I'll be posting in the chat box in a moment. Well, when I finish the Tai Chi part, and we could take a brief break and watch a few minutes of Tai Chi if you're interested in doing that, and then return back to continuing about wellness and hope. A few minutes ago, the speaker noted that today is a very auspicious day. It is the winter solstice here in the part of the world that is north of the equator, and yet it's the summer solstice south of the equator. This dichotomy, this difference runs through everything that we do in our life. And it's very interesting that this day is the shortest daylight hours of the year here in north of the equator, and yet it's the longest daylight hours south of the equator. So while most of us, or perhaps all of us who are attending this tonight, would consider that today is the shortest day of the year, daylight hours, those in the south would think that this is the longest day of the year. And so this contrast is an interesting contrast of opposites that permeates, that runs through the philosophies of Tai Chi and Zen and wellness. And so I think it's very fortunate and very appropriate that today we are able to consider some of these ideas. To start, I'd like to share with you some more of my background. Nobody really, well, there's a few people in this meeting tonight who personally know me, but most of you have never seen me or heard of me before. I actually, when I was very young, I thought to become a monk. In my late teens and early 20s, I seriously thought to leave the normal life and to become a monk. And I decided not to do that because I felt that I wouldn't be knowledgeable enough about life. And so I chose a path of what we might consider to be a normal life. I completed a high degree of education, a doctorate in law, among other degrees. I learned several languages. I traveled around the world. I worked in important positions and not important positions. And in the process of doing that, I feel that I gained insightful knowledge that I would have missed had I dedicated myself to the spiritual practices of being a monk from the early stages of my life. And so as noted, I started practicing Tai Chi, which is also a form of meditation. I actually started doing that in 1972 or 3, I forget exactly. So it's been almost 50 years. And in 1980, I had the opportunity to visit China. And as part of that visit to China, I visited the Shaolin Temple in central China. And as was noted in the introduction, I sat and stood before the wall that Bodhidharma had set before. And I was inspired to try to meditate for daily for 10 years. It was an interesting experience. There were days when I struggled against fulfilling my vow, and other days when it was very easy to do. And I think this is also part of that dichotomy that we are experiencing today with the summer and winter solstice, depending if we're north or south of the equator. And yet I managed to impose my will upon myself in a way that I was able to fulfill that wish, that vow that I had made that day in June of 1980. And since then, I completed that in June of 1990, and I've continued to practice until today. So that's sort of a basic introduction of where I am and how I came to be aware of these philosophical and spiritual practices. Zen, to start with, is a practice of meditation uh, that was brought to the world through the teachings and activities of Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma lived at the Shaolin Temple that I visited for 9 years, about 14 or 1500 years ago. He sat in front of that wall. He sat in a cave. Unlike me, he didn't communicate, or apparently he didn't communicate with anybody verbally, at least during those years. Uh, and I can't say that I limited or restricted myself to that degree, but uh, and then he took his teachings, he took the knowledge, he took the understanding that he gained and propagated and shared a vision of how to live one's life that blends harmony and self-restraint with meditative practices and insights into the nature of the mind. These practices today are widespread around the world. People know about Zen today, and it's commonly understood to be a form of a self-restraint, of self-discovery, of a meditative practice, and it provides a lot of a lot of benefits. Zen practitioners, in general, seek to perceive the true nature of things. That's what is the goal. What is the true nature of reality? What is the true nature of life? What is the true nature of how you and I are part of that life? And it's also the personal expression of this insight into the daily life, especially when we consider that it's a practice that should be aimed at how to benefit other people. Bodhidharma apparently journeyed from India, where he had studied Hinduism and Buddhism in India, and migrated to China, where he entered into this contemplative practice, and then from there shared his wisdom and his knowledge with the world. I like to think that I am now in a position in my life at 75 years of age that I can share some of my experience and some of my wisdom and knowledge, hopefully. It's a goal that I set when I was quite young, and I was determining not to become a monk. I thought to myself that I would like to be able to begin to teach when I was in my mid 70s. And so today is actually the first time that I've ever undertaken to do that. So for me, today is a special day in so many ways, uh, not just the solstice days, but also being able to uh, step into this role, this teaching that I had hoped to do 50 years ago, and hope to continue for several more years, uh, God willing, and I have good health. The practice of Zen in terms of benefiting other people is also a de-emphasis of personal knowledge. It's also uh, uh, how should I say, it's a, it's not that the practice of Zen doesn't want to conform itself to sutra teachings. It doesn't want to conform itself to doctrines. It wants to examine those ideas and to dissect them, if you will, as a way of gaining insightful information for insightful understanding, not information, insightful understanding of what one can truly see is life. In the introduction, we listened about how the prayer was offered from this school and their belief in the oneness of life. And Zen carries with it that same belief that we are all part of of each other. We are all part of the greatness of life. And if we can realize that, then we are able to live a life that expands in ways that are not understandable except through experience. It's really not possible to read something about Zen or even to listen to me about Zen and think that it's possible to understand what Zen really is. It's something that one needs to experience. As an analogy, if you will, it's like walking onto a diving board over a swimming pool. And if you stand on the diving board and look in the water, you can imagine swimming and you can imagine what the water feels like. But until you jump into the pool, you have no idea what it's really like to swim or to be in the water. And Zen is very much the same type of experience. The the uh, the the meditative aspects of Zen are very similar to the meditative aspects of the yoga traditions, of other traditions as well. But in terms of a time relationship in the history of human life, Zen and the yoga traditions are closer together in that time sphere. And so they carry many of the same ideas. And because Bodhidharma originated from India, he brought these traditions into China. And from China, they went primarily into Japan for several centuries. And then from Japan and China, they've now spread across the world. Uh, the practice of Zen emphasizes and is normally thought of as being a practice where one sits in a lotus position, is the common conception of Zen practice, with your legs crossed and your back straight and sitting straight. But it doesn't have, as in your meditation, but it doesn't need to be limited in that way. In fact, once one becomes comfortable with the idea and gains experience with the practice of meditation, it expands into everything that you do in your life. So you could be driving or walking or working or playing music or cooking or anything, and it can become a Zen experience, a sense of understanding, a sense of awareness, a sense of mindfulness. And so the expansion into one's total life grows and grows with practice. Uh, the techniques of Zen are normally considered to be mindfulness breathing in meditation practice. And so there's, you focus on your breath, you focus on the inhalation, you focus on the exhalation. You may have a mantra that goes with the inhalation, you may have a mantra that goes with the exhalation, or you may not. It really isn't important one way or the other, although the common approach to Zen meditation is to utilize a mantra. Another aspect of the normal approach to Zen meditation is the engagement with a master, a Zen master, a teacher who can guide you. And I feel that in all truth, that's a very valuable tool to have for you because it's easy to become misguided in your thinking. It's easy to become distracted in your thinking. It's easy to become uh, discouraged in your thinking. And so if you have a teacher who can guide you, they can help you break through these barriers. And the practice of yoga is very much the same. If with a good yoga teacher, you run into these walls in your practice, and the good yoga teacher will help you break through and gain understanding and insightfulness. Another aspect of the practice of Zen is mindfulness of let me see what I wrote down here, of the impurities of the body. the impurities of the body are that we are here temporarily, that our life is limited in time, our activities are limited in time. And so to be able to meditate on this aspect of life brings also a degree of understanding and a certainty and clarity into your life that is often, if not normally, missing without such a meditative practice. Uh, there's a third aspect of the practice of Zen, and this is really it's a Mahayana Buddhist concept, and that is of loving kindness. So, what I've found with my own meditative practice over these many years is that as I have continued to practice meditation, my heart has opened up more. And I think in part that's because it becomes more possible to see the pain and suffering that other people experience and the wish to help them find ways to address and to solve and to rid their life of that pain and suffering. And so this idea of loving kindness is it's a very it's part of the practice that grows, I've found, grows over time. Another one is that it's also a focus on Dharma, the cause and dependence on life. That I have, I have, I've in the last few years, I've had the joy of helping to raise my grandchildren, who are now 8 and 4 for a couple of years. After I had come back from the temple, after I had done that, I was invited to stay with our son and his wife and become an active part of my grandchildren's life. And what I noticed with young children is that as an infant, they have no concept of separation. They have no sense of division. Everything is unified in a way that we seem to lose as we grow older. And that's been a fascinating experience for me to see. The existence of our interrelationship is without question there. But as we proceed through life, without the training of a practice like Zen or yoga or meditation, we feel that we are an individual, that we're separate from everybody else, that I'm different than you and you are different than me. And because we are different, how can I trust you or how can you trust me? If we can come to a realization that we are all the same, that we experience life in much the same way, then we can gain understanding and compassion for each other. That allows us to grow and hopefully create more harmony in our world. At least this is certainly my wish. And these practices help to reverse that sense of separation, if you will. So, it's a very, very beneficial way to participate in life, to build a practice in your life. And it has a lot of benefits. Some of the benefits of the practice of Zen, of the practice of meditation, are that it encourages uh, generosity. If I feel that you are in pain, if I sense that you are suffering, if I feel that I can offer you some solace, some peace, some calmness and compassion. That's a type of generosity that is, in today's modern world, I feel is one of the pain points for our society. This sense of separation that exists in our society is really it's a it's an unfortunate condition. Another part of the practice of Zen, of the practice of meditation, is that it creates a basis for moral training. Renewing our perspective of morality is something that is I recommend is worthwhile. I notice with young children, they do it without effort. They are happy to share, they're happy to give. Sometimes they're fussy about it, they want to hold on to their toy, but children that are raised in a way to respect each other, or respect other people, are more willing to give because of that moral training. A third benefit of the practice of Zen and meditation is that it builds patience and endurance. Quite often, even today, after 50 years, I want to get up and stop meditating because I think I need to go do something else. It's funny, it's very curious, and I catch myself at this frequently. It's not something that I normally yield to, although sometimes I'll get up and go do something else for a little while, because I normally wake up at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning to meditate. I don't have as many distractions as I might if I was meditating at 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning or later in the afternoon. But even at 2 o'clock, my brain is able to conceive of things that I should go do that aren't really that important, but it's just a passing thought, a passing emotion up and down of life. And this is also part of the meditative practice of Zen and meditation in general. Another point of a benefit from the practice of Zen and meditation is that it builds this energy of effort or effort. And this energy or effort is the determination, the persistence, the will to practice in opposition to all the distractions, in opposition to my own personal distractions. One of my meditation teachers told me that if you could go into an open fish market and meditate with all the noise, all the sound, all the smells, all the everything that's going on in an open fish market, then you can really meditate. And so it's not about sitting in a cushion or a chair in a quiet, dark room with a statue of a religious, spiritual figure or picture in front of you. It's a whole different attitude. It's a whole different approach to meditation and the practice of Zen. And in master, you, I can say for myself, I couldn't master that in the beginning, but over time I did. And that vow I made to myself while I was standing there in front of that wall at the Shaolin Temple helped me grow in ways that allow me to say that today I have a lot of energy and ability to focus my effort that I'm very happy about because it brings a sense of peace and calmness. Uh, Over time, these practices also create a basis, if you will, a platform, if you will, for wisdom uh, about oneself and over time about others. About the others, one needs to recognize not to become judgmental. One needs to consider that anything that they're saying or that I'm saying or about somebody else is a judgment about them, especially if they haven't asked me for my opinion or my suggestion or my advice. And so these practices help to take away that sense of need of confronting people, of telling people what to do, of telling people how to live their life, and rather to become a model of peaceful contemplation, if you will, that other people would be drawn to. Uh, I had a I have a cousin, he's now passed away, who was in World War II in the U.S. Marines and invaded, was part of the invasion forces in the islands of the Pacific. And he went through all those invasions without being injured or wounded, which was quite remarkable. But then after he was discharged at the time of the Korean War, he re-volunteered to go to Korea. And while he was fighting in Korea, he was badly wounded. And one of the stories that he shared with me while he was in the hospital recovering was the compassion that he received from the priest, the Catholic priest, who would come and visit the wounded people and bring them comfort and calm. And it made him want to become a Catholic and to dedicate his life to taking care of people. So the idea of gaining wisdom in a way that we can be a model, if you will, of equanimity. Equanimity is a very interesting word. Equanimity means, in general, a sense of calmness, a sense of belonging, a sense of unity. And so, if we bring that wisdom into our life and then display it as we live, as we engage with others, this brings a sense of attraction to people. I have found over the years of practicing that people with pain in their life come to me without even knowing me. They come to me and they want to, physically sometimes, they want to hold on to me. They want to be held, feeling love and compassion. And all I can say is that I feel that this is a function, this is a result, this is a part of that benefit of the calmness that can come into one's life. Uh, an important practice or element, if you will, of the concept of Zen, which is really a Buddhist practice, is that it's based upon taking three parts of the Buddhist principles. And the first one is that the Buddha was taking, they call it taking refuge in the three jewels of Buddhism. And the three jewels in Buddhism are really about praying and about meditating on the teachings of Buddha, the Dharma of Buddha, and the community of people who want to live their life according to such practices. Perhaps most of you know that in fact, Buddhism is not a religion. There's no concept of a deity in Buddhism. Buddhism is a form of moral behavior, a form of life practices. And living at the temple, I saw people who were Muslim who came there, who were Christian who came there, who were Jewish who came there to pray, to practice, to learn, without any interference whatsoever with their religious beliefs. So, in this sense, Buddhism is a doorway, if you will, to practices of morality, to practices of generosity, to practices of moral behavior that we can adopt in our life if we so choose. Zen, as I said earlier, is an outgrowth of the teachings of India and China. In Sanskrit, Zen could be called, let me see, I'm sorry, I don't know, Devanapodi, I think it is. And in Pali, it's Jani. Uh, I'm not saying those words correctly, I'm sure, but it illustrates that these teachings originated in India. The history, the culture, the spirituality of India is phenomenal to the world. I was very fortunate for several years in my life where I was working overseas without my family. And every evening I had time to study. And I had taken copies of the Upanishads and Vedas with me. And I read and studied those. And the wisdom that is contained in those books is phenomenal. It's just wonderful. It's so enriched my thinking in my life. If any of you have never taken the time or made the effort to read them, I think that to do so if you're interested in spirituality, if you're interested in the way to grow your wisdom, I highly recommend you do so. Among other benefits of a meditative practice are one gains an ability to focus better, to improve your focus. Uh, by so quite often today, when I'm doing my sitting breathing meditation, I light a candle and place in front of me, not so much to look at the candle, but to hold my focus so that I don't wander away. My mind doesn't wander off into some other space. Seeing that light flickering in front of me, even with my eyes closed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, draws my attention back to where I am and what I'm doing. It also improves one's ability to prioritize and to plan. So in our life, we need to take responsibility for what we are doing. We need to take responsibility for what we need to do, and being able to uh, discard, if you will, distractions and pull our attention back to our priorities is something that is very beneficial. There's another part which has been a surprise to me, and if you've been meditating for a few years, maybe it's not a surprise to you, but that is that I found my creativity has grown. My ability to imagine different ways of living, different ways of thinking, different ways of interacting with other people has really grown a lot. It's this returning back to that concept of equanimity. It brings a sense of balance in myself that allows me to welcome other people in a way that I was not able to do at an earlier point in my life. I think that is a wonderful benefit. Uh, there's other aspects of energy cultivation by being able to relax, although that's a poor word to use actually about meditation, because meditation really isn't about relaxing. Meditation is really about struggling and working and paying attention, and which is just all of those are the pretty much the opposite of relaxation. But by doing these in a way that brings focus and ability to prioritize, it allows us to improve our energy and to restore our energy and to improve our memories, as well as empathy is another important concept that I think needs to be emphasized in today's world. Empathy, compassion, these are feelings of humanity, of our temporariness in this life, of our need to uh, live in harmony. And as one gains, as I have gained control over my mind, I feel that I've been able to maintain a more positive attitude about many things that uh, would be a distraction or even a negative influence. In today's world of COVID-19 and all the sub-COVIDs that we're getting hit with, in today's world of political corruption and violence, in today's world of greed and hatred and disrespect, being able to have a more positive attitude is a real benefit in terms of our general health. Uh, this also helps with, clearly, it helps with stress reduction and anxiety reduction as well. These have long-term benefits on our health and our happiness in our life. Uh, the control and there's a by so sometimes we have physical pain, and if we have gained experience, if we've gained the ability to focus our mind and our breath, we can quite often reduce that physical. We can quite often reduce that physical pain, and this also helps with our happiness in life. So, in principle, meditation, whether it's Zen meditation or some other form of meditation, if it's done with an honest intent, if it's done with faith and belief in what one is doing, if it's done with the sincerity of purpose, can provide our
पार्ले का
lot,
बड़ा पैकेट है क्या भैया?
a lot of well-being. Hello. So that's my few minutes of introduction about Zen and meditation and myself. And as I indicated earlier, if I'd like to take a break right now and see if there's any questions that anybody would like for me to address or any comments. So you can use the chat box or you can unmute yourself.
No, it was a very good overview covering all aspects. I have only two clarifications. One is there a need or a change in food habits, or it happens automatically?
I found for myself it happened automatically. I used to like to overeat and overdrink. I indulged myself when I was young. I like rich food. I like good wine. I like good times. And I found that by meditating and doing these practices, I couldn't continue living that way. I had to choose. And I didn't want to, I wanted to choose a different route. So for me, it was automatic. I don't know. Some people may need to be told, may need to be reined in, if you will, so to speak. But for me, it was automatic.
Thank you. And then what about the sleeping habit? They say sleep time will come down.
I'm kind of strange. I don't sleep much.
Oh, really?
A very
That's
long time.
interesting.
I'm 75. I started doing this when I was 26. And so I've built up this stamina, this endurance over the years that allows me to get by on limited amounts of sleep. It's not that I don't sleep, I sleep, but usually I'll sleep about 9:30 or 10 at night, and I'll wake up. If I'm lucky, I say if I'm lucky, I sleep 4 hours and then I wake up and meditate. And I'll meditate and read and write for 2.5 hours, and then I'll go back to sleep for 2 or 3 hours, and then I'm up for the day. So,
Thank you very much.
not at all. Any other questions? No. So our next topic this evening is Tai Chi. I started practicing Tai Chi when I was 26 years old, so almost 50 years ago. And the reason I started practicing Tai Chi was because I wanted a health practice in my life. I wanted a physical exercise practice that I could do without special equipment, without special conditions, without a special location, to help improve and maintain my life. I was very unfortunate in some ways when I was young because I grew up surrounded by a lot of sick people. My father was very ill from a very early age. When he was 37, he injured himself in his work and he never recovered, and his whole life was filled with suffering. Two of my grandparents were the same. Several of my other relatives were the same. They had very severe health issues. I recall meeting somebody who was in her 70s or 80s at the time that I met her, and she couldn't walk, she couldn't eat, she had to be seeing the doctor several times a week. She was taking handfuls of medicine, and she was quite wealthy monetarily, but her health, her life was very poor. And she told me, she said, Brian, I'll give away all my money. I'll give away all my wealth if I could only have good health. And so I took those lessons to heart. I didn't want to live my life with that model. I wanted to live a different life model. And I asked some friends about, recommendations, and I found Tai Chi, and I began to study with a Tai Chi master. He was 81 at the time I began to study with him, and I was 26. He didn't speak a word. Well, he spoke maybe 10 words of English. That was it. He didn't speak, he was Chinese. He didn't speak English at all. But he was a real inspiration because I would be there at 5 o'clock in the morning in the park at San Francisco, rain or shine, 7 days a week, because he was there as an inspiration for me and for a group of other people who also wanted to study with him. I found that the practice of Tai Chi over the years has had a very profound health benefit for my life. At the end of this segment, I'm going to post a video link, and I hope we can see a few minutes of it, me practicing Tai Chi. If you've never seen anyone practice Tai Chi, perhaps you'll find it interesting. Tai Chi is a Chinese martial art, and Tai Chi means the great ultimate or the supreme ultimate. It's a concept of combining in Chinese philosophy of the opposites of the yin and yang. So today we're experiencing the opposite of the summer and winter solstice, depending upon the equator. And in the yin and yang symbol, the symbol, there's this line that divides the dark and the light. And in the dark, there's a circle of light. And in the light, there's a circle of darkness. And this symbol rotates around and changes constantly and continuously with the flow of energy. And Tai Chi is the concept of Tai Chi is the unification of that energy, that spiritual, that physical, that mental energy that fills the entire universe. And as such, it's a very powerful concept. I'm not sure, perhaps somebody can help me. I'm not sure if in Hinduism there's such a concept or not. I read within the Upanishads and Vedas passages that I said, oh, this is exactly, when I read it, I said to myself, this is exactly like Tai Chi. I don't know if in today's modern practice of Hinduism there's this concept or not. Certainly within the Brahmanic past, the Vedic past of the development of Hinduism, there, in my belief and opinion, this does exist. Tai Chi is also a martial art, a very powerful martial art if used correctly. The interesting idea about Tai Chi compared to other martial arts is that it's not based upon attack, it's based upon response. Judo is similar in its philosophy, and Aikido is also similar in its philosophy, but Tai Chi has a more complete understanding of the opposites of energy. And so within the practice of Tai Chi, and my teacher told me that if you're ever in a situation that you're going to be attacked, or you recognize that you're going to be attacked, the best defense is to run away as quickly as possible. If they can't catch you, they can't hurt you. That's not how most people who practice martial arts consider the practice of martial arts to be. But I've found that for me, I'm happy to run away and not get hurt, or I'm happy not to run away and not hurt somebody else. He also taught us that we were forbidden to fight anyone unless there was one unless. Unless we're being attacked and we're able to kill that person with one blow. So imagine if you can kill somebody with one blow, you don't need to fight with them. It's not necessary in almost all circumstances and conditions. So Tai Chi has this interesting paradox compared to karate or other forms of martial arts. And for me, in my heart and my spirit, that was much more attractive than trying to hurt somebody physically by hitting them or kicking them. I much prefer to give somebody a hug and a pat on the head than to engage in some sort of physical violence. In Chinese martial arts, there's two schools of practice. One school is called the external form, and the other school is called the internal form. Tai Chi is part of the internal school form. The external forms would be more like what we understand of karate or jujitsu or some other forms of martial arts or fighting. The internal forms of martial arts are about gaining self-control of yourself so that you can recognize danger before it occurs. You can respond without a sense of threatening somebody else, and you can engage with people in a way that's not in conflict with them. I don't know if you think about it, and you think about having seen two dogs fighting. Two dogs don't start fighting immediately when they meet each other. They growl and growl and growl and growl and growl and growl, and then suddenly they'll start fighting. But as soon as that one is dominant, the other one turns up and turns its belly up in the air, and the other dog stops fighting. Tai Chi, in that sense, is similar, except that you don't respond to the conflict. You don't respond to the threat with a counter threat. You don't respond. So in our body language, we tense ourselves if we're being threatened. We withdraw ourselves. We can see, somebody can see that we feel threatened, and they can respond with more aggression. So a lot of times people are hurt and injured by aggressive people because they respond back with a threat that is a negative response to the person that is doing the threat. And so if your body can remain calm, if your mind can remain calm, if your face can remain calm when threatened, people can't, it's hard to fight with one, it's hard to fight against somebody that offers you no reason to fight with them. So Tai Chi also brings this sense of relaxation into your mind, into your body, that allows you to not exhibit defensive responses to people who are threatening you. Much like yoga, historical yoga, Tai Chi was a hidden wisdom. It was taught only to very few people, and only to people who over time demonstrated their ability to live a high moral value life. My understanding of traditional ancient yoga practices is that those who became yoga masters, those who became recluses, those who lived lived a withdrawn life, were few in number, and so the people who were taught had to be able to demonstrate to their teachers that they had this ability to live a calm, peaceful, meditative, compassionate life in order to advance in their studies. If they didn't have that capability, they were not allowed to study. They were asked to leave. They were run off. I remember when I first began studying Tai Chi, quite frequently, students would be yelled and screamed at by the teacher, and then they wouldn't be there anymore. And I couldn't understand why those students were treated that way. But over time, I realized that the behavioral patterns that many of those students exhibited at the class indicated a lack of sincerity on their part, indicated a lack of high moral values on their part. And in this, the teacher realized that they didn't belong there. So Tai Chi, like yoga, had this high wall, if you will, of moral behavior, of sincerity and purpose, of compassion towards others, as a foundation, as a really a strong part of the requirements. In many ways, more important than the physical practice itself, because without those strong values, the physical practice could be diverted into bad activities. And so, like yoga, Tai Chi is also to benefit oneself, but also to benefit other people through the perfection, through the growth of a wisdom in the practice. My teacher, for me, I was very fortunate because he actually broke tradition by teaching Western students. Uh, Historically, Tai Chi was a hidden wisdom in limited numbers of Chinese population. And I think probably we could say much the same thing about yoga teaching and yoga practice, that historically it was likely a hidden wisdom that most people were not exposed to and certainly were not allowed to study. Uh, but in today's world, these practices have become available to us and are spreading into a larger and larger population. And I feel that if you have a good teacher, if you have a good guide, it's important to have a good teacher. It's important to have a good guide, as I spoke about in the Zen practice, so that if we get mistaken, if we go off in the wrong direction, we can be pulled back. Not necessarily physically pulled back, but we can be encouraged with words or comments or some other type of a way to help guide us back to the middle way, the middle path, if you will. And so I feel very fortunate that I've had the ability to have that, have that. Uh, I was able to study with somebody like that. Most people historically have thought of Tai Chi as a practice of physical exercise and martial arts. Today, well, let me stop for a moment and go back. 50 years ago, when I began to practice Tai Chi, virtually no one knew what Tai Chi is outside of practitioners. It was not commonly understood in society or known about in society, especially not in Western society, and certainly limited knowledge of it even in Asian Chinese society. Today, Tai Chi, like yoga, like Zen, is well known and understood, and people want to uh, 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 learn more about it. In this way, it's grown in benefit. Uh, a lot of medical studies are now being presented to show the health benefits of Tai Chi. For senior citizens, uh, it improves balance. It can reduce the effects of osteoporosis. It can help to lower blood pressure, and it can have positive benefits on chronic heart and lung conditions. One of the people that I met when I first began to study Tai Chi had extremely bad asthma. His asthma was so bad that he had to spend 2 or 3 months in an oxygen tent every year. He began to practice Tai Chi, and within 12 months, his asthma was under control. He no longer needed to be in an oxygen tent. And so the health benefits of these practices are very powerful. For myself, I'm in, my doctor tells me that, she doesn't know what to do with me because I don't need her care. But she smiles when she says that. And I feel happy that I can tell her that I don't need her care either, but I still like to go see her because she's young and cute. And I still, think that that's kind of fun to go see my doctor. But, I'm also an inspiration for her and for other doctors who will come and see me. And I tell them, I said, you're taking care of people's health. Are you taking care of your health? Are you? And most of them are acknowledge that they're not. And, that's very unfortunate. Let me see. What time is it? So I'd like to take a break here. I could go on more about Tai Chi. Well, I'll go on a little bit more. So Tai Chi is also it's a very good form of physical fitness, of improving one's physical fitness. The Greeks believed that that the body was a vessel for the mind and the spirit. And that if your body if your body was strong physically, then your mind and your spirit could be strong. Having seen many, many, many sick people in my life, I don't recall many of those sick people who had a strong body. Almost all of them had poor health habits, had poor exercise habits, had poor dietary habits. And so these practices, these exercises, can provide real health benefits for longevity and improved happiness. So, any questions? My chat box is saying something about 5 minutes. I don't understand what that is. Maybe somebody can, or no, it's not my chat box. Yeah, my chat box. I'm going to post a link here, I hope. Of a video. I don't know. I'm not getting it. I can't enter my chat box, unfortunately. Snooze to snooze. Oh, here we are. I'm going to post. I think this is the right video. No, that's not it. Just a minute. Sorry. Excuse me. This is it. It's not working. I was going to post a video. I will share the link for the video later, and I will, invite you to come and see that at your leisure.
Right. Thank you.
Sorry?
I said, good, you can post it later and I'll put it on the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, thank you very much. That'll be hopefully useful. Are there any questions about Tai Chi that anybody would like to ask?
Yes, can I ask some question?
Please unmute yourselves.
Yes.
Ask
Please.
this question to him. 59 is 60 is 61. Like
I'm
6.
sorry?
Like
Go ahead.
6. But I'm only 6. Only 6, not 60. Well, 6.
You're 6 years old? Trusha?
Yeah.
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Sir, I want to ask, all the Tai Chi steps should be done step by step, or whatever, without any numbers we can do?
So well, the first part is to learn.
Okay.
And how you learn is dependent upon your teacher.
Okay.
Okay. And so my teacher taught one or two steps at a time, which I would practice until I gained some control over them. And then he would teach me one or two more steps. And this process took about 6 months.
Okay.
Okay. Some teachers, though, and that was so he taught individually. Some teachers, though, you go to a class and you join a group of people and you try to mimic and copy as best you can what other people are doing. And so, it depends on the teacher. It depends on it depends on the student. Uh, some students don't like to learn by themselves. Some students like to learn as part of a group. Some
Yeah.
students don't want to learn as part of a group and like to learn by themselves. So, it really depends. For myself, I felt that for me, this method of learning was best for me. But I don't know what would be best for you necessarily,
Right.
right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Not another question?
Any other questions? Please unmute and ask.
A question, sir.
Sure.
So I've come to know much more about Eastern philosophies and arts through mainly YouTube, and the internet. And my question is a general one in terms of meditation and in terms of Tai Chi and anything. For those of us who maybe don't have the time or the resources to go to a class or a teacher, do you think that YouTube and the internet is a fair substitute?
If there's no other choice, yes. If you can study with a teacher who is a good teacher, study with a good teacher. Because in these types of practices, it's possible it's possible to physically injure yourself. And if you physically injure yourself, you're going to stop practicing. And that's not what you want to do. Secondly, as you practice something like this, your mind can go astray. Your mind can go in a wrong direction. And you don't know that that's happening, but an experienced good teacher can recognize that. And they can help you come back to the path that you need to be on. So if you can't find a teacher, if you have no ability or no way to go and practice with somebody, but you want to practice, then you can do it. But probably what will happen over time is that you'll say, wow, I want to learn more and I want to study more and I want more guidance. And you'll go out and find that teacher and make that time that you don't think you have at the beginning. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That answers. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
Any other questions? No, Brian, I don't think they are.
Okay, very good.
Hi.
So we're moving.
Hi, Brian. Hi, everyone.
Salam. How are you? Do you have a question?
Alaikum salam, namaste. So, listening to you, I found that there are many relationships between Tai Chi and Sufism. But in the practice, there are, Sufism, because even in Sufism, there is this teacher who doesn't take everyone as apprentices. It takes only the ones who can endure all the stuffs he commands them to do. So I think that there is a relationship. Do you know anything about Sufism, Brian?
I know a little bit and I like to learn more.
Yeah, me
Uh,
too. I like that to learn more about Tai Chi too.
I
Yeah.
agree with your
Mhm.
observation.
Maybe yes, the way they practice it, maybe it's not the same, Tai Chi and Sufism, but there are many common points. I see that there are many common points
Yes,
between them.
yes, absolutely. Yoga also has the same kind of common points, similarities. Uh, I think that we could say all the mystery schools have this concept. And when I say mystery schools, I'm talking about the before becoming less so today, but before the secret teachings that were given to people who demonstrated the ability to persist and who had the values, the moral values to be taught. So in Sufism, in Islam, in Hinduism, and in any philosophical or religious system, there exist these similarities. And I think that this is the great unification, if you will, of humanity, the similarity of these different practices. So if I say, if I, if I, if I use a name for something, and I put that something in a box. If I don't have that box, that something can exist, but we don't have to say, we don't have to limit it. And these mystical schools, these spiritual schools, these religious schools, these practices and beliefs are to, I feel, expand our consciousness, expand our spirituality, expand our humanity. Uh, and too often, people will say, this is this, for example, Tai Chi. If you don't do it this way, it's not right. And you don't count what you're doing. But that's not fair because they're putting a definition on something. They're using their limitations. They're putting their limitations on the potential to grow. So, I think that is a reality that also needs to be thought of. And to me, what is the real benefit of living in today's world is something like what we're doing right now. I know we have people from the Middle East, we have people from India, we have people from North America. We may have a few people at this moment from Europe, I'm not sure. But we have people from around the world who are listening and learning and sharing. And so we have the ability to ignore the box. We don't need to limit ourselves in the same way that people historically have felt the need to do. And so much of those limitations that are used to separate us are used for greed and power by the people who are placing those limitations. So I completely agree that those ideas, that expansion, that ability to experience the eternal, if you will, is it's a very powerful it's a very powerful result that historically has been hidden. And today we are able to share that type of wisdom and knowledge in ways that we never could have done before in human history. So we have a real opportunity here. Not just here tonight, but I mean in our general life. Thank you. Any other question? Sundus? No?
Any questions?
This is, yeah, this is not a question. I just wanted to tell you that the one takeaway that I really, really appreciated was doing meditation in a fish market. Because it's so easy to do meditation when you're at home and everything is quiet. you get on the roads of Mumbai and you're ready to fight with everyone over there, quarrel with everyone. Thank you for giving me that new concept.
When my teacher told me that, I started laughing because I had had a fishing company where I would have to go to Fisherman's Wharf and help unload fish every day. And I understood exactly how distracting everything was in that kind of environment could be. So when he told me that if you can do meditation there, you can really meditate, I said, wow, you know, maybe I can do it. But you're right. And driving in a car, road rage is a serious issue. Serious issue. The rage that is building across the world right now because of the restrictions of COVID, isolation is a serious issue. People are freaking out. People are losing control of their life because of the inability to deal with this kind of these kinds of restrictions. And meditation helps with that. Practice of Tai Chi helps with that. The practice of Sufism helps with that. The practice, all of these practices can help with that. So it's very important to have these tools, if you will, brought into our life. Thank you for those questions. So our next topic is wellness. Haven't we been talking about wellness already? Everything we've been talking about is wellness. Mental wellness, heart wellness, health wellness, life wellness. But wellness is considered to be a separate category somehow. And a definition that I saw of wellness is that wellness is the act of practicing healthy habits on a daily basis to attain and maintain better physical and mental outcomes. How simple is that? How complicated is that? How difficult is that? How easy is that? I have 3 children. One's a doctor, one's an accountant, and one's a business manager. And I think in some ways they're unfortunate to have grown up with me compared to how I grew up. Because they grew up with healthy parents, healthy, happy, energetic parents. And so they think it's normal. Whereas I grew up with ill, sick, unhealthy people. And I realized that that was a normal I didn't want to be part of. And so I worry about my children, one who's 40, one who's 39, and one who's 31, about their future. But they don't like to hear about it. They just say, oh, Dad, don't worry about us. We know what we're doing. We're perfectly capable. And they have this attitude that is so common in life. At 30 or 40 years of age, you still think you're immortal. You still think you're going to live forever, even though in your mind you know you're not. Somehow you believe that you're going to be living for a long, long, long time. But people get sick, people get injured, people become ill, people become incapacitated at all stages of life. One person earlier this evening shared about a friend of his whose child is 13 years old and is experiencing brain cancer. My goodness, that's not something any parent wants to experience. That's not something anybody wants to experience. But that's also part of reality of life as well. And so this definition of practicing healthy habits on a daily basis to attain and maintain better physical and mental outcomes is a really important concept. In doing this, we're choosing not just to survive, we're choosing to thrive. We're choosing to become better than we were yesterday, and we're choosing to become better tomorrow. My teacher used to tell me, he said, okay, Brian, you did great today. What about tomorrow? And at first I thought, my goodness, can't I ever be good enough? But I realized over time that what he was saying was completely true. I couldn't be prideful. I couldn't pat myself on the back. If I wanted to thrive, I had to keep struggling. And it's not easy to struggle. And I find when I began to study, there were days where physically, because of the stretching, so one of the stretches that I had to do was I would bend over and I'd touch my chin to my toe. I'd pull back my foot. This is with my legs straight, okay? I'd pull back my foot and I'd touch my chin to my toe. Extraordinarily painful. There were days I couldn't walk, almost. Just painful, painful, painful. I wanted to stop, but I didn't stop. And over time, my tendons stretched. Doctors will tell you it's impossible for your tendons to stretch. I promise you, your tendons can stretch. My muscles became stronger. My circulation improved, and the pain magically disappeared. And it was curious when I realized that I wasn't in pain anymore because I didn't think about it. It just wasn't there. So this part of taking responsibility for our wellness, for our health, is something very critical in our life. Most people, excuse me, gentlemen, but most men devote their life to work, devote their life to their company, devote their life to their job, and devote their life to earning money to support their family. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. But in the process, most men die long before their wives die. That's not so cool, unless the wife was unhappy with the gentleman anyway. So taking responsibility for our physical health, for our wellness in our life, is really an important step that you can decide for oneself. Wellness also has another aspect, and that's a spiritual wellness. And I hear a lot of different definitions and ideas about what spiritualism is, but I want to say that spiritualism is a force that drives us to make sacrifices for others and for the greater good of humanity. I'll say that again. I want to say that spiritual wellness is the force that drives us to make sacrifices for others and for the greater good of humanity. If we don't have good physical, mental wellness, we cannot have good spiritual wellness. If we don't have good spiritual wellness, then we cannot contribute in the way that we could if we're thriving. So wellness incorporates this as well. Another aspect of wellness is emotional wellness. Emotional wellness is the building of an awareness of and accepting one's feelings and needs, feelings and moods. We all have moods. Even after 50 years of practice, I have moods. Sometimes I like to think I don't have as many moods as I used to, but my wife reminds me that I still have too many. But, they're not as, my moods are better than they used to be. And this is all part of improving one's health. And I feel very fortunate. I feel blessed. I feel a lot of gratitude that I found a teacher who inspired me to struggle with pain, who inspired me to struggle with taking care of my health, and inspired me to live a life where I could, hopefully engage in wellness practices and think of other people. Physical wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, social wellness are all concepts, aspects of the general idea of wellness. In today's world of COVID-19 restrictions and these other COVID names of Delta and whatever the other one is, and whatever one's going to follow after it, all threaten our wellness. And the general threat we think of is our physical wellness. But we're beginning to realize that our spiritual wellness is being threatened. Our emotional wellness is definitely being threatened. Our social and physical wellnesses are being threatened. And we need to, I suggest, we need to find practices that allow us to thrive. The gentleman who arranged for this talk this evening, Raj Kumar Dham, Mr. Dham, has created a very interesting program that he calls BMP, Body Mind Programming, that is much simpler to learn and practice, but offers than Tai Chi or even yoga, but offers benefits equally good to people who engage in the practice of his exercises. And these exercises are really about stretching and about moving your body. We like to think and believe that if we're really successful, we don't have to work in the sense of physical activity, that we can sit at a desk and tell people what to do, that we can look at a computer and do all kinds of things on the computer that makes us tons of money, and that we don't have to exercise and engage in wellness practices to thrive. BMP is a very powerful mechanism to bring that ability to people in a much more simplified way than the practice of Tai Chi, even than the practice of Zen. But BMP incorporates the philosophy, incorporates the concepts of Tai Chi in terms of stretching and body movement. So there are these other ways of bringing wellness into our physical life that expand our spiritual and emotional and social life as well, beyond Tai Chi, beyond Zen meditation. Understanding the difference between health and wellness is also something that we need to think about. To me, health is a state of being. If I am sick, that's a state of being. If I'm well, that's a state of being. If I have good health, that's a state of being. If I don't have good health, that's a state of being. Wellness, on the other hand, is a state of living a healthy lifestyle. So one of the interesting things that my teacher taught me was a form of meditation where I would stand with my arms like this for an hour at a time. And the energy would circulate around my arms. I couldn't do that in the beginning. In the beginning, I started at 2 minutes, and then I went up to 3 minutes, and then I went back down to 2 minutes, and then I went to 4 or 5 minutes. But over a period of several months, I was able to stand like this for an hour at a time. And my body became very, very, very strong, very strong. And he told me that if I could do that for 3 hours, that when I walked, the earth would shake. I don't know if he was exaggerating or not. I've never made it to 3 hours. I've thought about it. But the point of what he was saying is that by having this strong, powerful exercise, this commitment to wellness, not to health, yes, to health too, but to wellness, improves everything about your life. And these types of practices. So what I was going to say is that one of the things that he surprised me about while he was in explaining this was that he said, even if you're in a wheelchair, even if your legs can't move, you can do this. And you can increase your energy flow. You can increase your circulation. You can improve them. And I thought that was pretty interesting idea. And so, today we become aware of people who are identified as being physically restricted, paraplegics, people in wheelchairs, people who are we identify as being physically disabled, but that's an unfair description. That's not fair to those people because their disability is one part. It doesn't have to impact all of their life. And so if we have these practices, even if we become physically disabled, we can maintain a degree of a wellness that might escape us otherwise. So wellness practices, Zen, meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, BMP, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever they are, these types of practices provide benefit long-term to our health and well-being. Wellness is important also because everything we do and every emotion we feel relates to our well-being. I'm going to say that again. Wellness is important because everything we do and every emotion we feel relates to our well-being. Think about it. Is there anything you can think of that would contradict that? I don't think so. So if we understand this as an intelligent, responsible adult, there's no reason for us not to practice it. The distraction of a job, the distraction of riding in a car and finding the traffic overwhelming, the distraction of an argument with your wife or husband or best friend, those are just temporary distractions in our life. They fade in and out. But if we're not well, if we don't engage in wellness practices, if we don't seek to have a life in which we can thrive, these build up. They become more and more and more and more of a burden until finally we just become overwhelmed with the negativity of these aspects of life. And it destroys our sense of happiness. It impacts negatively our health. And it can destroy our relations with other people. So what's interesting to me is that wellness is considered in many people's minds as a separate category, and rightfully so, but it's also a basic platform that if we recognize its importance and we find a practice like Tai Chi or Zen or BMP or some other type of mental physical exercise, yoga, then we can strengthen that platform. And like the Greeks said, if you strengthen your body, if you strengthen your spirit, then your mental and your spiritual life becomes stronger and more positive. Questions? Comments?
Namaste, sir.
Yes? Trusha?
Sir, Ji, my question is, sir, is there any direct or indirect connection between sound and Tai Chi? Because myself, I'm a certified sound healing therapist. So I would like to more about it. If there is any connection between sound and this Tai Chi, proper sound should be produced or something like that?
No. Well, maybe. Yes. How's that? No, yes, and maybe. So sound is a very interesting concept. A very, very powerful concept. And a lot of people are beginning to think that sound is the future of medicine. I'm sure you're aware of that if you're a sound therapist.
Yes.
So sound is a very powerful concept. And you may or may not be aware that the sound of Om is 7.3 hertz. And 7.83 hertz is the pulse of our is the frequency of a healthy heart. And 7.83 hertz is also the frequency of a healthy Earth planet. And so this sound is a very, very powerful sound spiritually in our life. And I
Sir,
have a, yes.
sir,
And so,
myself, I'm a yoga instructor too. I have done my 1-year diploma in yogic science.
good.
So, yeah.
So,
So I can resonate your each and every word you speak.
so when you're doing Tai Chi,
Mhm,
you should focus on doing Tai Chi.
mhm.
Okay. You shouldn't focus on sounds. You shouldn't focus on thoughts. You shouldn't focus on distractions. You should focus on doing Tai Chi.
Mhm.
That's the hard part. That's the
Yes,
easy part. It's like yoga. When you're doing yoga, you're not focusing on sound. You're focusing on what you're
yes,
doing.
yes,
But sound can complement that.
yes,
But it can also be a distraction.
right,
And
right.
so how to have a how so as a teacher, what do you teach in that way, or what were you taught about that?
Sorry.
You're now a teacher. What were you taught about sound in terms of yoga?
Sound when I do about singing bowl, I have 7 set of singing bowls that what I know from my teacher is it works as a particular base chakras according to chakras.
Yeah.
And when I talk about yoga point of view, I focus on Om sound
Yeah.
Hello.
and humming sound too.
I think should be
Yeah.
I
coming to
focus
end
on
now.
humming sound too.
Yeah. Um,
Okay, yeah.
I
You can
think that if you feel
you can
comfortable
put in the chat.
in your headset, Raj, you're on speaker.
Sorry.
So the sound cannot become a distraction.
Yeah.
If it supports a practice in the moment,
Yeah.
that's good. But over time, the distraction can grow. And so that's a worry that you need to be concerned of as a teacher. I
Right.
suggest to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about wellness. Do you think the external trigger, internal trigger will make us do it regularly? Because we know what is good for us. But do you think people like you, guide like you, regularly reminds you why you're not doing health? Or internal motivation is different for different people?
Well, I think your question is very important. And I think your question highlights the historical reason that people in general were not taught these practices. Because people in general are unable to practice. I'm sorry, it's the truth. People can find inspiration and change their way of life, but in general, people are unwilling to make. It's curious. People can make a commitment to work 12 hours a day and under painful, derogatory conditions, but people cannot make a commitment to exercise and take care of their health for 20 minutes. It's very, very curious. But that's reality. But what we have today, okay, to extend your question, I think, what we have today is we have tools that didn't exist before. What we're doing tonight is one of those tools. So with these tools, one of the things about human psychology is that small doses build up good habits over a period of time. Sort of like getting a vaccine for the virus, you know, it's supposed to help you get stronger and protect you over a longer period of time. Beneficial health practices can be applied and learned in the same way. So earlier I was asked about whether one would be taught small incremental steps or would be part of a group in Tai Chi, and I explained that either one of them can happen, and I explained that for myself I was taught in small incremental groups, small incremental steps, and I found for myself that that was more beneficial because I gained confidence in what I was doing. Tai Chi is about balance and movement and smoothness of movement. The uh, the uh, uh, the need to focus when you're doing that is very, very important. I just received a message saying I have 18 minutes to finish. I think we can do it.
The behavior was so nice, exciting. It can go on. But
So,
normally the school ends on the 8 p.m. So you
yeah.
can little sum up and
Well, we'll see where we end up. It depends on you, my audience. I try to meet the expectations of the people who've honored me by allowing me to be part of this. So in today's world, so I don't like to talk about advertising, but advertising is based on repetition of message. Marketing is based on repetition of message. And repeating a message incrementally over and over and over and over again, people respond in a way that the marketing and advertising wants them to respond. Teaching people to engage in wellness activities can be approached in a similar way, I suggest to you. Trusha, who's engaged in sound teaching of yoga, I'm sure you experienced that in your work with ill people. You give them small steps to practice, and you build up their confidence over time, and then they can feel more comfortable about what they're doing. The problem is that
Yes.
we feel good after a short period of practice and then we stop.
Yes.
So, we have this paradox. Well, I feel really bad, and so I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to exercise really hard. Oh, I feel good. Now I don't have to exercise anymore. So that's that state of health. That's not the state of wellness. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In yoga, we say sthir sukha asanam, steady, pleasurable pose. I mean, you should enjoy this.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You should feel good by what you're doing.
Yes. Yes.
I forget, I don't know if it was you or somebody else. I asked them, I think it was somebody else. They said they'd been practicing for a few months. And I asked them, do you feel better because of what you're doing? And they said, yes. Normally what I find is people will recognize that they feel better within 2 weeks. And it's remarkable how quickly our body can heal itself with these types of practices.
Sir, I would like to say one thing. There is
Sure.
an Patanjali Yoga Sutra. One sutra is there that is Prayatna Shaithilyanantam. That means effortless. You have to reach that stage where you do yoga without efforts, ease. That is the main.
I don't know that I'll ever reach that point. I have effort every day.
Right.
But I'm not unhappy about that. I don't feel discouraged about that. I just think it's part of what I do. And if I go to work at the office, I have effort every day. If I'm driving my car in traffic, I have effort every day. If I'm cooking dinner, I have effort every day. So that concept of effortless is something that a lot of people in Zen talk about, but I don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go on.
When we enjoy something, it become effortless, and then it
Yes.
become easy. In
Hmm.
DMT, we say, easy, effortless, and enjoyable. Enjoyable is more important. In any hobby, we enjoy it happens effortless, and then
Yes.
difficult thing become easy. That is
Well,
the
I like to dream too, and I hope that dream comes true for me. So far, it hasn't, but I don't mind because I feel healthy and I feel happy and I feel good about my wellness and my well-being. So I think that in that sense, it becomes effortless, but it's still an effort. So our last topic, actually our first topic, hope. And I say our first topic because if we engage in practices of Zen or Tai Chi or well-being, we hope that we're going to receive some benefit from it. And so hope at the end is also at the beginning. It's also in the middle. It's part of our life. In the ancient wisdom of the school of wisdom, the Vedic traditions, hope was an important concept in the sense of optimism. The Vedas celebrate life. They offer a sense of optimism and hope. These ancient texts are actually not sectarian, sectarian meaning restricted to one system of belief. They're in fact a text that we could say are elegant poetry. And if you look at the fundamental teachings of the world's great religions, I believe we would reach the same conclusion, that they're poetic expressions, if you will, of the human heart and potential. Certainly those are being misused and abused across all religious spectrums, unfortunately. But the underlying foundation, in my belief, is that they are there to present a sense of optimism and hope. The idea of eternal life, the idea of other things that can destroy hope are 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 contrary to the real parts of the human spirit, I believe. Just a second, I want to read a comment. I'll come back to your question in a minute, Dr. Anita Sharia, because I want to explain a little bit more about hope and the wonder and innocence that the early peoples held in their life, the Vedic peoples, other early cultures, is an aspiration, is an inspiration for us today, I think. The practice that I undertook at my mother's death of 3 years of isolation and mourning in a meditation was a practice that grew out of a Confucian tradition. It was a practice that was built around the idea of family harmony, uh, community harmony, and respect in the family situation, so that people knew their position and knew their responsibilities. So much of that has been destroyed or diverted. At best, it's been diverted. At worst, it's been destroyed under the types of society that we find ourselves living in today. Long time ago, when I finished graduate school, I took a year holiday. I was very fortunate. I saved my money and worked hard while I was in graduate school. I took a year holiday and went to Spain. This was in 1975, 1976. And living in Spain, I came to understand that the traditional culture, family-oriented culture of Spain, much like the traditional societies of ancient India, of ancient China, of other historical cultures, Persia, other historical cultures, was being rapidly destroyed by the changes of the economic environment. The need to acquire possessions, the need to have more money, the need to have more possessions was an overpowering force in people's lives. And I witnessed what I felt was the destruction of family values. And I rebelled against that, and I went looking for answers to that. And I was surprised to learn that back in ancient China, at the time that the first emperor unified China, which was about 300 BC in the Western calendar, that he had asked his court scholars to study and recommend ways to create social cohesive organization. And I was really surprised to learn that these court scholars had identified economic organization as the worst way to organize society. They told him, under no circumstance should you use that model for social organization. And the reasons that they gave was that it breaks down of family values. But today we believe that economic organization is the highlight, the pinnacle of human society. And what we're witnessing, if we're objective, is we're witnessing the devastation of families, the destruction of families, the lack of respect among families. I've told several people, I understand that in other parts of the world, the problems we've had in the United States aren't the same. But I've told several people that, to me, the best thing that happened from COVID-19 isolation was that they stopped killing students in schools. Suddenly, mass murders of schools stopped. Why do we have this kind of problem? We have, the reasons are complicated. But basically, if you had a strong family, cohesive values, you're not going to have that type of situation. If you have a responsibility of family memberships and relationships, you're not going to have that kind of situation. So returning back to the ancient wisdom schools, the Vedic root was that we should take human life to its height in every way. I'll say that again. The Vedic route, the ancient wisdom was that we should take human life to its height in every way. So if we utilize our belief in wellness and engage in practices for wellness, we expand our ability to thrive. We expand our ability to reach the heights of humanity, of civilization in every possible way. The Upanishads, another ancient historical set of documents, urge us to dedicate ourselves in a way that we can always experience our best moments. If we don't have good health, if we don't have good wellness, we can't experience our best moments in a strong, positive, thriving way. So all of these are integrated, all of these are connected, all of these are part of the unity that is one, that we belong to. The wisdom that exists historically, the ancient wisdom, if you will, is in many cultures. I was fascinated to study Confucian thought. I was fascinated to study Vedic thought. I've been fascinated to study other ancient wisdom schools of Egypt and of the Native Americans. The wisdom is so similar. It's like Sandus, what you were talking about before of sorry, I lost my train of thought of
Sufism.
the Sufis is the same kind of wisdom that we have blasted out of our vision with the overwhelming sense of the screens that we walk around holding in front of our faces all the time today, that we didn't do 2 years ago as much, and we certainly didn't do 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 200 or 300 years ago. We couldn't do that. So we're being distracted away from what's really important about life with this false idea that only supports greed and hatred and jealousy. That's not fair. There's also very beneficial aspects of this technology and these abilities to communicate, just as we're doing this evening. So there's this need to recognize, to balance, to bring harmony, to bring equanimity into our thinking, into our life, that allows us to live a better, happier life. I agree with this. I've tried to live my life this way. I don't think I can claim that I've succeeded every time I've stepped out into the rain. I get wet. I get angry. I get upset. I get unhappy. I don't get sick. I almost never get sick. Really, I almost never get physically sick. But I experience all those other aspects of life, as does everybody. But I feel, sincerely, because of the life practices that I've made a commitment to for myself, that I can struggle, I can live through them in a way that I see other people unable to do so. And that has inspired my writing, that has inspired my poetry, that has inspired my beliefs. Tonight is the first time I've ever shared these ideas. I've never done a talk like this before. Maybe a little bit on an individual basis, but I've certainly never done it on any type of a large scale basis like tonight. So I feel humbled by doing this, but it's something that I think that maybe we need to do more of, and sharing and encouraging other people. I was going to say that because of my training, my education, I'm actually fairly decent writer of argumentative arguments, trying to convince people that what I'm saying is right, trying to convince people that they're wrong. And I came to realize that that's not a very good thing to do. And so I changed my writing style to poetry. And I find poetry to be much, much more inspirational, because it gives people the freedom to find their own thoughts, to find their own imagination, to define what they're reading and thinking for themselves. And they don't have to rebel, they don't have to struggle, they don't have to put up a barrier against what I'm saying, because what I'm saying isn't a threat in poetic expression. And what I find fascinating is that the historical wisdom, the ancient wisdom, the schools of mystical wisdom used much the same forms of expression which I wasn't aware of at the time, but it's time to end, it says. So do I have time to read 3 poems? Any questions about hope?
Any questions about hope? I don't think there are.
So I have a little, I wrote down, I copied out 3 poems. So first of all, at the top of your chat board, you'll see a long link. If you utilize that link, you'll be directed to a website that's under construction. It's a website that I'm developing with a team of people. And yeah, can we live without hope? Impossible, we cannot. And if you utilize that link and you enter your email and name, and you want to put any comments or questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But if you do that, I'll send you a free book of some poetry, electronic, a PDF. So it's up to you whether you would like that or not, but the link is there for you to use. And as I said earlier, I'll post a link on that you can watch me doing Tai Chi. So here is a Zen poem I wrote. The usefulness of the cup is its emptiness. The warmth that it contains is its fullness. The taste you will attain is its richness. Surrounding emptiness, restraining, holding completeness, savoring abundance, fulfillment. That cup reflects your life. I just lost my, sorry. That cup reflects your life, heart filling joyfully. Be aware when you hold a cup carefully, carefully. So much, seemingly so little. Imagine now love. Living love, radiating loving compassion, your life complete. Another poem. You asked, what is love? Let me share these truths. Love is a fruit in season at all times, within reach of every hand. Others may gather, yet there is no end, no limits set. Everyone may reach this love through meditation, by prayer, sacrifice too. Intensive inner life opens the heart. Life evolves over time. We cry with hunger, laugh joyfully, speak quietly, sleep contentedly, love eternally, yield, argue, smile, cry. Remember, forget. So live, love, life. That's all. All that and more, we believe, seeking now than not. Life's over, yet still others recall, and so we live. Life is love. Life's love. Another one. Do we seek conflict in order to demonstrate we can overcome it, to establish superiority, to show we are still alive? I'll say that one again. Do we seek conflict in order to demonstrate we can overcome it, to establish superiority, to show we are still alive? What if harmony were our rule for this life? Would we suffer, lacking in conflict? Would life be different, lacking conflict? The interest invested to maintain conflict will do what to prove lacking conflict, will do everything to prove lacking conflict is impossible. Don't believe them. Know the difference. Live life harmoniously. What reason is there not? What reason is there to not? And finally, souls have no color. We are all from the same source. We are meant to love unconditionally. So there's a couple of questions here, which I'd prefer to address privately. And so if the people who've asked the questions would use that link and send them to me, I'll be very happy to respond to you. They're important questions, but I think that for this evening, the moment is to, oh, there's another link, the Brian link, Brian. Oh, thank you, Rick. Rick posted a different version of the link. So you can use this link that is posted down here, the link mentioned by Brian, which is http://namasteinspirations.com. And you'll be directed to an under construction website where you can enter your information and any questions, and I'll send you back a free PDF of some of my poetry. Any questions? So thank you very much.
So thank you so much, really, Brian Lewis. It was wonderful. I now request Mrs. Malati Janakiram to propose a formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Malati.
Thank you. Thank you, Sajani. Thank you, Brian Lewis, for this wonderful session. And in this festive season time, it was relevant because it was actually a good fortune to have a person like you giving us your precious time to communicate such an interesting talk, and that too just before Christmas. It is really an apt precursor to the holiday festive season. And thus, on behalf of the participants, our School of Ancient Wisdom, and the able technical support from Aniket and Swati, and the session being livened up nicely by a person like Sajani, I wish to thank you all again. And I would also like to conclude this whole session with a Loka Samasta and spread the prayer of healing to all the beings in the world who are undergoing suffering and pain. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti. Shanti, Shanti. Om Tat Sat Brahma Paramastu.
Everyone for being with us today, and we look forward to having Brian Lewis at our school sometime. He wanted to come this year, but with COVID, he hasn't been able to. And Brian, we would love to have you at the school and have a personal talk, all of us. And thank you, Mr. Dham, for introducing Brian Lewis to us. We have another talk on Thursday, and this is a person who's battled cancer twice. And her talk is Fear is Not the Key, Gyanu Veena Satish. So those of you, please join us at 6:30 on Thursday. Okay? Thank you once again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you soon.